I was born in a place where the horizon feels closer than dreams, where the air smells of dust and gasoline, and the sun falls so heavy it seems to melt fate itself. That place was Texas, 1954. My name was Jack Harper, son of a farmer, a man who spent his life staring into the cracked earth, waiting for rain that never came. We weren't poor. We were worse. We were the ones God forgot to count. Every morning I woke before dawn, fed the cattle, fixed the machinery. Then I'd drive my old '37 Ford into town, where it smelled of oil and expensive perfume. Up on the hill stood the Beaumont house, straight out of a magazine. And behind those iron gates lived her, Evelyn. I didn't know her then, just saw her a few times at the fair, at church, through a car window. But whenever she passed by, my whole world went silent. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because in her eyes I saw the same longing I carried inside. The longing for a life beyond the horizon. That day it all began. It was July. The heat so fierce even the birds stopped singing. I was fixing my tractor by the roadside when I heard a soft engine hum behind me. I turned and was nearly blinded by the gleam. A white Cadillac, brand new, straight from the showroom. She stepped out, in a white dress, gloves like someone from another world. I wiped my hands on a rag, not sure where to look. "Good morning," she said, quiet, confident. "Everything all right?" I squinted against the sun and said, "Now it is, ma'am." She smiled, slightly, as if she wasn't used to sincerity. Looked at my hands, the tractor, then the horizon. "You work on the Harper farm, right?" "Yes, ma'am." Though calling it a farm is generous. Just a few acres and some stubbornness. She laughed softly. "I've always thought stubbornness is what Texas runs on." And she got back in the car and drove away. And I stood there, feeling the world had changed a little. A week later, I saw her again at a gas station. She couldn't open the gas cap. I helped. "Thank you," she said. "You're Jack, right?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then call me Evelyn." She reached out her hand, pale, delicate, with a ring flashing in the sunlight. I didn't know if I was allowed to touch her, but I did. That's how our talks began. At first short, then longer, deeper. Sometimes she'd visit the farm, pretending to care about the horses, and I pretended to believe her. We talked about everything: music, movies, what freedom meant. She told me about parties in Austin, expensive dresses, empty conversations. I told her about the smell of gasoline, the work under the sun, and my dream to someday reach California, where the sea meets the sky. And the more we talked, the more I knew she didn't belong in her world, and I didn't belong in mine. But together, we were home. Sometimes at dusk, when the heat faded, I'd sit on my truck's hood and stare at the city lights, thinking, what if this is a mistake? What if some things aren't meant to be reached? Then I'd remember her eyes, and I'd think, maybe a mistake's worth living for. One evening, I heard a car pull up. It was her, no driver, no escort. "Jack," she said, "come with me. I want to show you something." We drove in silence until we stopped by an old bridge. Below us ran a narrow river. Above, the stars shimmered. She leaned on the rail and said, "Sometimes I think I was born in the wrong body, the wrong family, the wrong time." I stepped closer. "Maybe you're just looking in the wrong place." "And you?" "I'm still looking. Don't know what I'll find." She turned toward me. The wind played with her hair, and before I could say a word, she kissed me. Everything disappeared. Only her breath, her warmth, and the soft Texas wind remained. I didn't know what began that night, love or disaster, but I knew one thing for sure. There was no turning back. Texas, 1950s, a story of dust and destiny. I always thought Texas smelled like expectation. It smells of heat, iron, and sweat, of the wind that roams between the hills and never stops. When the sun rises over the pastures, the earth seems to breathe, heavy, tired but alive. In that breath, I was born, grew up, and grew old, though I was only 20 then. My father's farm stood away from the road. A small house, 2 cows, a rusty water tank, an old '37 Ford. We lived poor, but we didn't complain. You don't complain here. You just do what you can. I woke before dawn to mend the fence, milk the cow, check the pump. Sometimes I thought this was life, the only one I'd get. And then I saw her. She was driving down the highway in a white Cadillac. The dust behind her rose like the desert itself was trying to touch her. She stopped at the roadside. Something wrong with the engine, I guess. I came over to help, expecting nothing more than a quick thank you. But when she lifted her eyes, blue as the sky before a storm, the world stopped. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft as cotton. "Could you tell me where the nearest gas station is?" "Not one closer than 20 miles, I said, "but I can bring you a can of gas." She smiled, and that smile shattered every notion I had of distance between heaven and earth. Her name was Evelyn Beaumont, daughter of the richest man in the county, owner of oil fields and banks. A name people spoke with both respect and resentment. I was a farmer's son, dirt under my nails, sun-bleached shirt. A whole world stood between us, but in that moment, it vanished. We talked only a short while. She drove away, leaving behind perfume and the sense of something impossible. I thought I'd never see her again, but a week later, she appeared at the gas station by accident. Then again and again. She said she liked watching the sunset over the hills where we lived. But I knew she just wanted to escape her polished, golden world. Sometimes she came to the farm. She'd sit on the hood of my pickup, take off her gloves, run her fingers through her hair, and ask, "What's it like, living without parties, servants, promises?" I'd answer, "It's not life, Evie. It's just one day after another. But at least you know where you stand." She'd laugh, and in that laugh there was more truth than in all her father's speeches. We started meeting in secret, by the dry riverbed, where only the crickets and our whispers could be heard. I told her about my dreams, to buy land out west, build a house, live by my own rules. She listened, saying she wanted the same. One night I asked, "Why do you keep coming back? You know this isn't right." She answered, "Maybe for the first time it is." We were young, and we believed love could change fate. But in Texas, fate isn't changed, it's endured. Rumors spread fast. Someone saw her car near my house. Someone told her father. Mr. Beaumont didn't yell. He just announced that Evelyn would leave for New York to respectable society. She cried, begged, but the iron in his voice was stronger than her tears. We decided to run away. I fixed the Ford, packed what little money I had. She packed a small suitcase. The night before, I couldn't sleep. I listened to the wind moaning around the house and thought maybe it wasn't too late to stop. But love makes a man stubborn. We met at the old bridge as the church clock struck midnight. She ran out of the dark in a light dress, no hat, her hair loose over her shoulders. "Jack," she whispered, "let's go before anyone notices." I opened the door. She sat beside me. The road was empty. We laughed like children, free at last. She said she'd never felt alive before. I promised to take her somewhere no one could find us, where we could start over. I wanted to believe such a place existed. But headlights appeared too soon behind us. Her father's black car caught up near the canyon. I pressed the gas, but the engine coughed. The old Ford couldn't take the speed. On the bridge, the motor died, and then the light behind us flared. The crash was short, like a gunshot. The car spun, flipped. The last thing I remember was Evelyn's scream and the smell of gasoline. Then darkness. When I woke, it was quiet. The bridge was burning. The Cadillac stood across the river, door open. Evelyn lay on the road, motionless. I crawled to her, called her name, but she didn't breathe. People came soon after. Someone pulled me out. Someone covered her face with a scarf. Then came court, talk, and silence. Her father said it was an accident, no one's fault. But I knew it was ours, for believing in the impossible. I left, worked wherever I could, oil rigs, railroads, docks. Drank cheap whiskey to forget how July wind smells. Years passed. 15 years later, I came back to Texas. The town had changed. The farm was a warehouse, the bridge replaced by a highway. I rented a room in a cheap motel. That evening, I went to a bar and ordered bourbon. On the wall hung an old newspaper clipping. The Beaumont family sells their lands. Oil field shut down. End of an era. I smiled. Every ending brings someone peace. The bartender turned on the radio. A song played, the same one from that night. Something inside me clenched. I pulled from my pocket a small necklace, the one I'd held when they found her. The metal burned cold against my fingers. I looked into the bar mirror, and for a moment I saw her reflection, standing behind me, in her white dress, glowing like sunlight through dust. She smiled. I blinked, and she was gone. Only me, an old man with tired eyes, and the dust rising beyond the window. I raised my glass and said aloud, to no one in particular, "We almost made it, Evie. Almost." And then my heart stopped. Not from pain, from silence. They said later I just fell asleep at the bar, head on my arms. That I looked peaceful, like a man who'd finally seen what he'd waited for all his life. When they carried me out, the dust rose over the prairie again. The same dust as that day I first saw her on the road. And maybe somewhere beyond the horizon, she really was waiting, in a world with no rich or poor, only wind, sunlight, and a road fading into infinity.